Hello friends, this is Dr. Sumiti Ahuja and I am Assistant Professor at Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. The next thing which we have to discuss is distinction between void agreement and voidable contract. Now here again see, it's void agreement and voidable contract. What we just discussed in the previous slide was void agreement and void contract. Here it is voidable contract. So void agreement is agreement not enforceable by law, whereas so these are 3 points of distinction between void agreement and voidable contract. First is void agreement is an agreement not enforceable by law, that is you cannot go to the court and claim your rights, claim relief against the infringed rights in the court of law, whereas voidable contract is enforceable until it is repudiated by the aggrieved party. I'll quickly take you back to refresh your memory by telling you about the voidable contract. Remember in our session related to free consent, we had discussed that if the consent is not free and is obtained by or is driven through coercion, fraud, misrepresentation or undue influence, it becomes voidable at the option of such party whose consent was obtained through fraud, misrepresentation, coercion or undue influence. Now we are trying to say here that in case of voidable, so that party whose consent was so driven will have two options and that party can choose either. First option is that even if my consent was obtained through fraud or undue influence was exercised against me, but still I choose to continue with such a contract, reason being that it is in my benefit, even slightest of benefit, but I am getting benefited out of it and I wish to continue with it. That is one option available. So voidable contract is enforceable until it is repudiated by the aggrieved party. So if I choose to continue with that contract, I can enforce my right under it if later on some dispute arises. And the second option is that the party may choose to repudiate or terminate that contract by exercising his or her right that consent was not freely obtained. The second point of difference is void agreement cannot become valid contract. It cannot become a valid contract, but voidable contract will be a valid contract if the aggrieved party chooses to continue with the contract. I just told you about the two options. One, you continue, the second, you repudiate the contract. So it says voidable contract will be a valid contract if the aggrieved party chooses to continue to stay in it, whereas void agreement cannot become valid contract, because the reason being that there is some essential of a valid contract which is missing in it. Or you can also say, if I may put it in simpler words, that it has been expressly declared to be void under law. It has been said that if this is the situation, the agreement is void in the eyes of law. So something which the law is declaring to be void, how can one convert it into a valid contract? One may have to enter into a different or a new contract altogether for that purpose. Third is, void agreement cannot create rights for third parties, because it's void agreement. You yourself have not obtained any right, you have not got any right under this agreement because it is void in nature as expressly declared under law. How can you pass on those rights to any person? So void agreement cannot create rights for third parties. But when we talk about voidable contract, it says while a voidable contract can pass rights to third parties before being repudiated. Say for example, a person committed fraud against the other person to obtain his or her consent, and the contract was related to sale of a particular property, right? And the person who entered into such, one of the parties who entered into such contract whose consent was obtained through fraud, gets to know about that fact that he was the facts were falsely misrepresented to him at a later stage. But before he gets to know about it and he repudiates that particular contract, he has already passed those rights which he got in that subject matter to third person. So, this point says that is correct. So, voidable contract can pass rights to third parties provided the same is done before repudiation or termination of contract by the party at whose option it is voidable.